Welcome to Ask the Tech Coach, brought to you by the TeacherCast Educational Network. If you are in charge of professional development and looking to build an innovative digital learning experience, this is the podcast for you. Join us each week as we uncover strategies that tech coaches are using to drive their digital transformations one classroom at a time. And now for your host, with over 2 decades of experience working with tech coaches and ed tech companies from all around the world, Jeff Bradbury.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today and making TeacherCast your home for professional development. This is Ask the Tech Coach podcast, episode number 208. Today, we're going to be diving into one of my favorite topics, data. That is right. We're going to be diving into data, figuring out numbers, charts, graphs, and I have a fantastic instructional coach from the great state of Ohio. We're in the Cincinnati area from a fantastic company called Forward Edge. And today we are going to be learning all about why data, how data, and if this is not your jam, I promise you, I'm going to be able to give you at the end of this all the resources that you need. All the links for today are going to be over on show number 208. But if you head on over to TeacherCast today and check out our resources, we're going to be showing you how to do dashboards. We're going to be showing you how to do Microsoft Forms. We're going to be showing you how to do Google Forms. We're going to be showing you the value of spreadsheets, and we're looking to put together some live shows. I am looking forward to all of this. I know I'm a data nerd, and you should be too. But if you like this show, please do me a favor, like, subscribe, share this with your friends. The one thing that I've been learning is after 200 plus episodes, there are so many different coaches out there that we've affected. And I want to say thank you guys for making TeacherCast your home for professional development. My first guest today is an instructional coach for the Forward Edge company out in Cincinnati, Ohio. She also has a bachelor's of science in French education, something that I'm interested in diving into a little bit. I want to bring on today my good friend, Miss Lisa Kuhn. Lisa, how are you today? Welcome to Ask the Tech Coach.
Thank you, Jeff. I am doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
I am so good. By the time people are listening to this episode today, I should be riding Space Mountain and having a good time with my triplets. And I know that's a bad way to start off the show, but we've been doing a lot of great content over the summertime, and it's all because I've taken the kids to Disney World this week. So we're having a good time with it. How's your summer been? You were also at the ISTE conference, weren't you?
I was, yes. And it was quite busy, but I did get to steal a couple of days beforehand to visit an old friend of mine that I've known since 4th grade. So he and I got to hang out for a couple of days, and then I got to just enjoy the hustle, bustle, and craziness of ISTE.
I hope everybody came out okay. I there is going to be a show where I stop saying this, but I mean, I walked out a little bit more positive than I should have. Everybody in your group came out safe and healthy?
Yes. We had a couple of COVIDs, but considering we had a group of about 20 down there, I think we did pretty well.
Wow.
We have 3.
And when you say a group of 20, we recently did a show with your colleagues at Forward Edge, but in case anybody hasn't checked out that show, talk to us a little bit about what you do. What is Forward Edge? What is it all about?
Okay, so Forward Edge actually started as an ed tech company focusing on the hardware, the devices, the networking, the cabling. And about 6 or 7 years ago, our director, Katie Ritter, came on board and created the curriculum and integration team, which is us coaches. And we have been growing ever since. We work with schools local here to the Cincinnati area. We're a Google partner. And so what we were doing at ISTE with our group of 20 was we were actually running the adaptive learning lab that Google hosted. And we had, I think, 800 or 900 individuals come through, which was absolutely amazing. It was a great time. And then in addition to all that, we also run our own podcast. We post webinars, we do virtual coaching, we do PDs of all sorts. And we've even reached out into the international world and had a Google boot camp for a group in Trinidad and Tobago not too long ago. Wow.
That sounds like an amazing adventure. How did everything go?
It was virtual, so it would have been a lot better live. But no, it went great. It went really well.
Nice. I am excited today to have you on because when we reached out and we started to talk after ISTE, you had a session at ISTE that was unlike all the others. And I say that because many of the coaches were doing, 5 things you need or 5 ways to use, or here's my favorite digital tchotchke or something.
Right.
And you've been focusing on, wait for it.
Yeah, drum roll.
Data. And this is something that I think every coach needs to hear. I think this is something every coach needs to understand. This is a topic that whenever I start talking and pontificating about data on the Coaches Network, everybody's like, what? And it's only 4 letters, DATA, like data. How do we use it? How do we leverage it? If you have any questions about that, we are going to be talking about that today. We're even going to be doing some live shows about it and showing you how to collect it. But Lisa, why is it important that coaches not be thinking just about the classroom, but thinking about the data collection?
I've learned a lot about data. I must admit that I've always appreciated it, but it was always very scary to me because it could be so overwhelming. But as a coach, I've learned that it's very important to be collecting it and using it to basically do what we're trying to get our teachers to do, and that is to inform our instruction. With that data, we can see, where the strengths and weaknesses are of teachers. We can get the strengths and weaknesses of ourselves, and we can be working on constantly improving everybody for the benefit of the students ultimately. That's my nutshell pitch.
And I couldn't agree more. And when we're looking at this concept of data, let's just kind of talk broad and then we'll kind of go in a little bit here.
Absolutely.
I have a feeling that when you have a coach that was a traditional classroom teacher, they're focused on the lessons, the creativity, the curriculum, all of that stuff is important.
Yes.
But now you're living in the administrative part of education. Mm-hmm. And I've always said the way to an administrator's heart is through data and charts and graphs.
Yes.
And it's important that today we make that decision to start thinking like an administrator, because ultimately it's the administrator that signs you up to teach and coach for the next school year. And so Absolutely. How do we balance that creativeness, the curriculumness, the educationness with the data that is needed to help us survive as coaches and keep our positions alive?
Yeah, I like the way you worded that. First of all, take baby steps. If anyone who is either new to or scared of the whole data picture, do it in baby steps and start with something as simple as Google Forms. It will give you basic charts and figures that you can show to the administration. So whether it be something like feedback about a PD that you gave, or if you're doing coaching cycles and you have a reflective kind of survey that the teachers do to give to you, you can share all that as concrete evidence with the administrators. It does not take a lot of time. Once you get going, but it is something that is so critical because no matter what stories we tell, which are all important, right? Those day-to-day stories, those bright spot stories are all important in talking to the administrators, but it is that data that is really the anchor for us and the hook to get those administrators to keep pulling us in and using us for what we're there for.
I look at it this way, and sit down for this one for a second. And I'm kind of weird, but our jobs is to essentially tell the story of what's happening in the classroom.
Exactly.
When we speak with our uppers, we tell these amazing stories of how teachers are transformative and wonderful.
Mhm.
Now, what we want to do is we want to get our bosses excited about those stories to then share with their bosses.
Yes.
And so if you're thinking of the whisper down the lane game, you're going to tell a story of how you walked in and you saved the day and it was great and it was wonderful and the students were reacting and all this great stuff. And the boss is going to turn around to their boss and go, Lisa was wonderful. And what is going to back that up? And what's going to back that up is he's going to say, he or she's going to say, Lisa worked with 34 teachers this week. And out of those 34 teachers, 17 of them were doing this. And look at all the charts and graphs, because you want that upper to then go to the Board of Ed and go fund the program. So
Right.
Look, I'm a little weird with this. It is a personal journey for me here to make sure that no matter what we're doing, it's self-preservation, right?
Yes.
Like we need to make sure that, because look, the teachers don't care about this data we're collecting. And in my opinion, the teachers don't even need to know that we're collecting the data. It's just a matter of making sure that we have this cycle of what's going on. When we're looking at things, you had mentioned something. I'm going to ask you a pointed question here because I think I know your answer.
Okay.
You had mentioned Google Forms, and we'll say Microsoft, some kind of a form.
Yes.
For so many coaches, they start off the year by using their calendar to keep data. What's your thoughts on that?
I will tell you, the only thing I use my calendar for is for scheduling appointments.
And I think that's the right answer. And I think that's the right answer because when your principal or leader or whoever comes to you and says, Lisa, how busy have you been? You're not going to show them this visual. They can't take a visual with them. I'm sorry, I'm going to be preachy today, but this is so important for anybody listening. You need to be able to package your story to be passed on to somebody else.
Yes.
That has a budget, right? Like that.
Yes.
That's the cycle here, right?
Along those lines too, Jeff. Well, along those lines, a lot of times as coaches, we're focused on what we are doing or what the teacher is doing.
Yep.
And ultimately, it really helps to be collecting data from the students as well. And a lot of times when we're working with teachers, they're the ones collecting that data.
Yes.
So it's important for us to work with those teachers so that we can get a hand on that data to also share with the upper echelon who makes those decisions. Because it's one thing for us to tell the story with or without the data included. It's another thing for the teacher to be included in that storytelling. But when you bring back the impact that it's having on the students, that's the golden egg right there, because that's ultimately what administrators are. That's what they want. That's their end goal.
I say that again, because when we're looking at this, and we're going to talk about this a lot on the show, we're going to talk a lot about this in the Instructional Coaches Network, like, subscribe, etc. I always try to give my uppers, I'll call it my dashboard, right? Here's the numbers up on top, and then here's links, or here's embeds, or here's the projects that are the product of the hard work work of your administrators, hard work of, because really all of this comes from the fact that the district has a strategic plan. The strategic plan says students will be amazing. Yeah. How do we get there? You are the through. Like, students are going to be amazing through the work you do. Mm-hmm. You can only show the value of the through the numbers. So I always start my chart, here's all the numbers, by the way, and then by the time you get down your data chart, it's, here's this great Google Slides thing, or here's a s'more, or here's an audio, whatever it happens to be. Like, give the whole story. Yes. And so when we're talking about this, let's talk a little bit about the data collection. You've been changing these words around, and you've been calling it thread counts. And I love this analogy. Talk to me about this, because when I looked at your presentation, I was just floored. But I want you to walk me through. And by the way, the presentation and stuff, from like all the links are going to be over here on our show notes, episode 208. Check it out. What are you talking about when you say thread counts?
Well, let me just share with you where the name even came from, because there's a little story behind that.
Please.
When we were at McCall earlier this year, we were scheduled we have our webinar. And it happened to be that one of our webinars was scheduled to be recorded while we were at McCall. And the topic happened to be data related. And someone said, oh my, you're going to have to go back to the hotel room to record this webinar because there's no place quiet enough. And then they're going to see your bed in the background. And so the joke became that it was going to be a webinar about data between the sheets. Of course, they never changed that title. So we took it and ran with it. And we decided, okay, what is it about this thread count? How can we make it fun? Because data can be overwhelming to people who are not those logical data thinkers to begin with. So the idea is with a thread count is you have your basic linens that are like 80 to 140, weave count, very basic minimum. And for us, that translates into something like a Google form or a Microsoft form where you just get that basic information back. You have not manipulated it. You've not modified it. You've not conditionally formatted it, nothing. It's just the raw data as you've gathered it. The idea is to take data up, and as Emerald used to say, bam, right? Maybe some of you aren't old enough yet to remember him. But the idea is to grow and increase your thread count so you've really got some cool data stuff going on. So when you move up to the second category that we had, which was cotton, you're now moving up to the 200 to 400 thread count. That's where you start some basic sorting and formatting. Okay, so you might sort from highest to lowest, or sort by classroom, sort by teacher. You might also start conditionally formatting. When you get up to sateen, which is 300 to 600, that's when you're really starting to jump in. You're using formulas and charts and tables. And that can be very scary for those who are not data minded, right? So we've opted to offer a fourth option, which is the Egyptian cotton. It is the thread count of all thread counts. And what we have found very useful and helpful at the Egyptian cotton level is a tool such as Data Studio. Even those people who are scared of data can create these incredibly visually rich charts to share with their admin. They're easy to read. It easily gets the information out. But it really takes that data up to a whole new level that is not really is easily attained just by your formulas and simple manipulations within sheets to begin with.
This is not difficult. This just takes a little bit of planning. Yes. And the reason why I think this system is so genius is because you don't have to go to level 4 in August. Right. But you do have to start at level 1 because for so many coaches, me included, you get to a certain point of the year and you realize I don't have data. I don't have what I need. And for me, the reason why I'm passionate about this is because I got to the end of my first year and my superintendent, who was my supervisor, says, tell me what you've done. And I didn't have the right answer. He was looking for visuals to share with the board. And I came in and I wasn't able to talk at the altitude.
Right.
And anybody who's been listening to this show for any of the 200, that's where my craziness comes in, is because there you are looking at your boss and he's like, I love you. Show me why. Right. And I didn't have the tools to answer the question. And when we're looking at this, what is let's go back to step 1, right? You're 80 to 140. What are those basic data points? Like when I walk into a classroom, I should be looking, I don't want to say looking for, that sounds observational, but I mean, I would assume it's how many times did you work with a teacher, right? Like what are some of those basic things that if I was listening to this podcast and said, I want to make a form tomorrow, what is it? What are those basic things that I need to know?
So some things that I really like to keep track of are, what is it that I was doing with that teacher? Was I coaching them through a coaching cycle? Was I co-teaching with them? Was I helping them with one of those, little fires that happen? And record some of the information related to that, some of the details. I like to know how often I am in there. So I'll put the dates in there to see, when I was there, how long I was there. I think those are some key elements just at the surface level for me to collect as a coach. And then I need to support it with the evidence, shall we say, the evidential data of the teacher outcomes and the student outcomes.
And when we're looking at that, and when we're putting together a form, it's important for coaches to know what Lisa just said. These are drop downs. Like if I'm going to go black and white here, and if I'm going to show you the data, Google, Microsoft Forms here, like what I do is I find the list of all of my teachers and I just drop them into the drop down question type.
Yes.
And I bring this up, Lisa, because I working with a lot of coaches, I see a lot of them have the open-ended question.
Oh yeah. Oh no.
You don't want to be typing in a teacher's name, right? My recommendation is you do this all in one, because I can do a question for name, I can do a question for grade, I can but what I end up doing is I say 5th Lisa is something, maybe school, depending on how you do things, right? So that way, and the reason I do that is because my philosophy says that every Google form, Microsoft form, is a spreadsheet waiting to happen.
Oh yes.
So you want to be creating your forms for the spreadsheet. And if I have, so basically, start thinking about the data as you're building the form, right? So like for me, I would put like 5 Lisa's science or something like that. So that way I just know it all works.
Yes.
And I like to build my forms and then I stick them on my phone. You take the link, you put them on your home screen, and it's just like an app on your phone. How do you do you wait till you go back to your room, your office? Like when do you do the data?
I wait till I go back. I wait till I'm at my computer. As you can see, I am of a certain age. I have my natural highlights. Okay, well, the audience can't see. I have some natural highlights and I've got the bifocals. So my eyes do not like working on the phone screen.
Okay.
So I usually wait. Either I'll take a minute before I leave the teacher's room, or when I return to my office, I'll fill out that information. Something I'd like to piggyback on, though, for your point about building the form with the mindset of looking forward to that spreadsheet data. The drop down is going to be your friend when it comes to being able to analyze this data. Every time you type something into a form, if you type it in slightly differently, so maybe you capitalize Lisa this time, or you put a space in front of it, the spreadsheets might see it as different data and not see it as all the same information. So as much as you can use drop downs for your questions to make all of the answers exactly the same, do that. And one of the biggest lessons I got about data was use long, narrow data, not wide data. And the person who presented that used data from Star Trek and had a short, squatty data and a tall, skinny data to visualize it. So it really stuck with me. And what that means is you want each question to represent one piece of info. One piece of info.
Yes.
So instead of what tools do you use on a regular basis, and you have them list 20, you got to reformulate those questions in such a way so they're giving you one answer at a time.
Lisa, if I wasn't already married, I totally recommend. Okay, so like, and by the way, Lisa and I are having fun right now, but if you have any questions about this, over on TeacherCast, I have many podcasts on this topic. I have many blog posts on this topic. I have downloadables for and videos for how do you create data studio, all of this stuff we have, right? So if you're questioning it, check me out. Also check out all the stuff over on forwardedge.com.
forward-edge.net.
/edge/net. We'll make sure you have all the links on that. When I first created my form, I did the boxes, right? Like, what tool did you use? Many options. Check.
Yes.
Horrible. Horrible. And the reason is because if you go check, and you put that into Sheets or into Excel doesn't understand that way of thinking. No. So you have to do, God, we're data nerds right now. So you have to do, did you use Sheets? Yes or no? Did you use Docs? Yes or no? And your form might have 100 questions to it. But that's where knowing your spreadsheets, and obviously it looks like, Lisa, that's going to be another episode. There's a reason for all of that stuff, yes. Right? And yes. but you don't want to spend too much time doing things that you don't want to spend too much time on. I'll give you an example, and Lisa, I'll let you, expand on this. But now's the time we're having those conversations. Hey, Mr. Principal. Hey, Mr. Supervisor. Whatever. What are some of the things you're looking for this year? Great. Put that in your form. Don't spend your time taking minute data on things that like you don't care about. But you know what? If your district just bought Nearpod, I'm going to make a chart that says how many times has Nearpod been used. I know they have that analytic in the back end, but you want to show how many times you've helped Nearpod because, again, there's a dollar value with that transaction in there.
Exactly. And to go a step further with that is I think it helps some of us coaches get this idea if we actually help a teacher do something with data.
Ooh,
because,
why?
Again, we're in our little tunnel sometimes. And one of the clearest pieces of evidence I ever got was working with a third grade teacher who she wanted to use forms as a way to have her students self-reflect about the lessons they were doing. So she had a pre-assessment and a post-assessment self-reflection, and she would use the standards for the chapter as the questions. And it was, I understand whatever this concept is. Yes. Kind of, never heard of it before, kind of a thing. But she found that she didn't listen to me at first when I said, make it very basic, very linear. Exactly. She found that as she was asking these questions before and after, she was slightly changing the options that she gave students instead of keeping it the same. So instead of yes, no, maybe so kind of a thing, it was, oh yeah, got it now, or nope, still don't have it. And it's like, nope, we got to keep it the same. We got to keep it linear so that the spreadsheet can see it for what it is. And when you change, it can't compare it. It goes wonky.
And that's why I think it's important that we have this show now, we have this conversation now. It's okay to add, right? Yes. Like in the middle of the year, you're going to start doing a wee video. Great. Add it in there. But to change, that's where people get messed up with things. Because you're going to have a meeting in the middle of November and the boss is like, hey, we're doing this. Great. Figure that one out. Add it to your form, make a new form, do something with it. Strategic plans don't change, but the minute bullet points in the middle of the year certainly do. So I think just to kind of wrap up what we're saying here, because we're going into a lot of rabbit holes, which is awesome. Figure out what the data you want, right? And that's having those relationships, building those, conversations. Like, what are you looking for? How you doing things? Last year, my building was into discourse. Great. I made sure there was a question that says, was Jeff supporting a discourse type lesson? Understand, never. Understand, there's no plugs in that. Understand who the data is for. Sometimes the data is for you, the coach, because you need to keep a record. Sometimes the data is for the administrator trying to figure out what the big picture is. And sometimes the data is for the teacher, because I can sit down, if Lisa's my teacher, I can sit down with her and I would never show her this, But I can say, look, we've worked together like 14 times this year. And every time you're asking me about forms, let's do something with slides tomorrow, or let's do some presentation things, or, always having an idea of when you walk into somebody. First of all, say you're sorry. But number two, always make sure that you have this vision for where you want to lead and follow that teacher. So we're talking about, how to collect it, when to collect it, where to collect it. Now, I want to talk about the Egyptian here.
Yeah.
I use the word data dashboards a lot. I know you had mentioned Data Studio. One of the things that's on TeacherCast is how do you build Excel data. All of these are great things. And of course, episode 200 we just had with a great coach named Jonathan. He was talking about like Connect Hub, which is a data dashboard within itself.
Absolutely.
Talk to us a little bit about Data Studio. I've used it. I understand it. I've learned a little bit about it. It still scares me because all I'm doing is importing a spreadsheet and pushing buttons. How do you use Data Studio?
That's the great thing about it, is all I have to do is push a button. That Data Studio has helped me take data to a whole new level. I've always understood formulas. Like I can look at a formula and read it and know what it's trying to do. But despite the fact that I know French and it is a foreign language and I can create full sentences in French, I cannot do it in spreadsheet talk. I can read it, I can understand it, still have trouble creating it sometimes. So Data Studio, that's the big plug I have for it, is it does all your formulas for you. You pull that spreadsheet in, you tell it the information that you want. You tell Data Studio what information you want to visualize, and it pulls everything for you. You do have the ability to adjust things. So for example, if the answers were yes, no, but you want to quantify them, you can do a simple formula and change the words to a number. You could also do that back on your original spreadsheet. But there are examples. So if you check out the link that Jeff's going to have, check out the link, because there are some examples at the end of the Data Studio slide deck that show some examples of pie charts and bar graphs. And like one teacher did averages for heart rate. And yes, it's going to look a little alarming because the low is 0 and the high is 914. That's what you get when you're working with middle school kids. So just be aware that you got to work with the students on this too sometimes, but the possibilities are endless. And if you go out there and do a search on Data Studio, there are examples of all kinds of just incredibleness out there for visualizing your data.
And I'll again say there's no wrong answer, but we want to make sure that we're having the data collected so we can give the right answer.
Yes.
And right for you might be colorful and fancy and lovely and
true that.
Canva-y. And right for the Board of Ed might just be, hey, I need a pie chart.
Yes.
Like, total teacher interactions. And the other day my wife was saying, how long do we have to keep our taxes for? So let me ask you this. When we're now looking at multi-year coaches, and let's hyper explain the term coaching cycle. I can now sit there being in my third year of this position going, year 1, I had 100 touches. Year 2, I had 150. And now year 3, I have 195.
Yes.
I can show my value to the district over time. That's my coaching cycle.
Yes. So that is an overall coaching cycle. Absolutely. That's the big umbrella. And then you've got the individual coaching cycles where you're working with a teacher for an extended period of time. So I might work with a group of 6 to 10 teachers during the first semester. And we meet once every week or every other week throughout that time and do the visits and the meets and so on. There are actually 2 levels to that coaching cycle. And the one that you mentioned with the year over year, that is exactly what those administrators need to be seeing. Absolutely.
What's the future of all of this stuff? I mean, it for me, it seems pretty black and white. and keep your data, keep updated with your data, get yourself into a system where it's just second nature. You work with the teacher, you go in the hallway, you fill out a form. This isn't a chore. I'm certainly hoping that people don't leave this show and go, I have a new part-time job. Like, this is how you keep the job. This is how you show the value. This is how you tell the story. But what's your long-term with this? Like, when you are working with districts, when you are working with your teachers, how do you go through and explain the value of this long-term?
Wow, that's a deep question, Jeff. Because I don't know if you just picked third year out of the air or what, but I just finished my third year with the school district that I'm at. And we are now to the point where there's that trust built. And part of that trust has been built through the data and seeing, the effect and the impact that I've been having with the teachers and the students. And I think long term, it's important to keep that going because we can't just rest on our laurels. They may have seen some great things in year 1 to year 2 to year 3, but we can't peter out. We got to keep it going, and we got to keep supporting ourselves. Like you said, got to support ourselves and keep us going and keep showing our value because we're the ones in the classroom. Those administrators are not seeing what we do live, in person, face to face, in the moment. So long term, we definitely have to keep that going. And as you keep it going, you find easier and faster ways to do it. You become more efficient with it. So for those of you who do feel, like Jeff alluded to, it's a chore. No, it might feel like a chore at the beginning, but it quickly becomes just a part of what you do. Kind of like if you've ever been to the doctor or a counselor and they, you got a 45-minute appointment and they use the last 10 or 15 to document the notes, physical therapy. You get 20 minutes and the last 10 minutes are they're documenting their notes. So we have to do that too. Definitely important.
I think this is an important topic. And I think this is a topic that needs to be on the mind of so many instructional coaches, like now, especially as they're starting the year. If you're not comfortable with Data Studio, that's okay. We'll help you through that. If you're not understanding how a Microsoft form to an Excel sheet works, it's okay. We're here to help you through that. If the word pivot table is not in your vocabulary yet, it's okay. We'll help you through it. I'm going to give you probably the best advice that I can give any instructional coach when it comes to collecting data. And I know this is weird. Stick with me. If you're building a coaching form, do not open up Google Forms. Do not open up Microsoft Forms. My advice is either A, get a whiteboard and draw it out. B, pencil and paper, right? C, a Word doc, Google Doc. Put it linear so that way you can see things. Last year, I made this gorgeous system. And then I realized 3/4 of the way in that I was redundant and I had questions that could have been combined. And if I did X and Y, then Z would have looked prettier. And I say the whiteboard because, of course, it's now visually in front of you and you can erase it and get yourself messy with that. But whenever I'm looking at what I refer to as spider charts, do it visually first.
Yes.
Share it with a coach. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Lisa at Forward
Absolutely.
Edge. What am I missing? Right? Because look, I've done this for 8 years and every one of them has been some form of great and some form of, I wish I did that differently. Right.
Well, I would even offer for those who like the tactile of the paper, use Post-it notes.
Yes.
Because those you can move around very easily, and you've got both the visual and the motion available to you, which is wonderful.
When I make my charts, the first question or the first section of that Google form is like, what type of interaction? And it's like conversation, coaching, IT-based, building related, and depending on which of those answers in the drop down, that goes to layer 2. And then layer 2, I call it my algorithm. It wraps around into, right? But you can't just open a form.
No. It's like a choose your own adventure.
I don't know if this podcast is actually sounding good for it, but I hope everybody gets where I'm going with this, right? And again, trust me, I have the content on TeacherCast to share with everybody. Like we're doing these presentations this year for you guys, but you got to draw it out. And you got to change it around. You got to be able to make mistakes with it. You got to go, oops, okay, that didn't work. Or, oh, I need it to add.
And that's the best way to get through this data is do it. Either succeed or fail miserably, right? Yeah. And you keep going. And
it's okay. Try something. But I urge you, I think this entire show, Lisa, is going to be called Don't Rely on Your Calendar, right? Like your calendar should not be your data collection.
Well, and that just kills me because I don't think I've ever known anyone that kept all their data in the calendar. That's a new one for me.
If you learned something today, we'd love to hear from you guys. The best place to do that is to reach out to us on social media. You can find us at Ask the Tech Coach. Of course, you can find us at TeacherCast also. And we would love to hear your voice. Lisa, where can we learn more about the great things that you're doing? And tell us a little bit more about what Forward Edge is doing and how to get in touch with the group.
Awesome. Well, there are lots of ways to get in touch with us. Our website is forward-edge.net. And you can see everything we've got there, including our webinars. We also have a podcast called Restart Recharge. It's at hashtag #RRCoachcast. That's a great one to go see. We also have our Edu Collective. It's getting ready to go through a little name change, but it's a PLN for coaches. So be sure to check us out there. And then my personal Twitter handle is Lisa K, the letter K _Tech Talk.
All of these resources are going to be on our show notes over at episode number 208. I urge you to check out this episode, if not once, a couple times. Share this with your friends. Hit that like button, subscribe button. Head on over to AskTheTechCoach.com. Scroll to the bottom. Join our Instructional Coaches group. We've got a lot of great stuff. Over the last 4 weeks, we have revamped our newsletter content. We've revamped our coaching content. We're going to be revamping our data content. Everything that we've been working on for the last couple of years, I'm giving a nice shine to get everything ready. And of course, we're going to be doing our live shows. And I hope Lisa and her team over at Forward Edge joins us for a live show sometime. Yes, I'm putting you on the spot.
I'd love to.
And
maybe we can speak French.
We will be speaking French.
Très bien, très bien.
Okay, you lost me there. But that wraps up this episode of the TeacherCast Educational Network. On behalf of Lisa and everybody here in Ask the Tech Coach, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classroom and continue sharing your passions with your students.
You've been listening to Ask the Tech Coach, hosted by Jeff Bradbury of the TeacherCast Educational Network. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter at AskTheTechCoach or online at www.askthetechcoach.com. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.